Welcome to our channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our spooky stories. I have always been a lover of nature, someone who seeks the peace and serenity that can only be found amidst tall trees and the songs of birds. So, I decided to camp in a secluded forest in Ohio, a place promising the silence I craved. I left home early, with my backpack full of supplies and my compact tent, eager to spend a night under the stars. Upon arrival, I was greeted by a vast expanse of dense trees, their interlaced branches creating a natural canopy that filtered sunlight into golden beams. The ground was covered with a soft layer of fallen leaves, and the air was fresh and clean. I walked deeper into the forest, searching for the perfect spot to set up my camp. The silence was almost absolute, interrupted only by the distant sound of a stream and the occasional chirp of a bird. Finally, I found a small clearing surrounded by majestic oaks. It seemed like the perfect spot, isolated yet not overly far from the main trail. I efficiently pitched my tent, securing the stakes into the soft ground and organizing my belongings inside. As I worked, the sun began to set, painting the sky with a deep orange that slowly turned into a dark blue. As night fell, I lit a campfire to cook my dinner and ward off the chill creeping into the forest. The flames danced and crackled, casting long, twisting shadows around me. Sitting there, listening to the crackling of burning wood, I felt a profound calm envelop me. The solitude, which might be daunting to some, was a balm to me. After eating, I lay down on my sleeping bag inside the tent, the opening facing the dying embers of the fire. The weariness from the hike and the cozy warmth of the fire quickly made my eyes heavy. As I settled in, with a gentle hum of insects and the rustling of leaves in the wind as my soundtrack, I thought nothing could interrupt this perfect night of tranquility and introspection. Little did I know that peace would only be the prelude to a night I would never forget. I woke with a start, unsure of what had jolted me from sleep. The silence that had once seemed reassuring now felt oppressive, heavy. The fire outside had dwindled to embers, casting a faint, pulsating glow through the tent entrance. I checked my watch. It was just past 2 in the morning. That's when I heard it. A distinct sound, almost imperceptible, like the snap of a branch breaking under an unknown weight. My heart began to race. It must be some animal, I thought, trying to calm myself. But there was something eerie, an unsettling feeling I couldn't shake. My eyes swept the interior of the tent, adjusting to the darkness. I grabbed my flashlight, clicking it on with a sound that seemed deafening in the night silence. With the shaky light, I stepped outside the tent, expecting to find only darkness and the emptiness of the forest. However, as I passed through the tent opening, a chill ran down my spine. Something wasn't right. The night seemed darker than it should be, as if an invisible shadow enveloped everything around me. I moved the flashlight slowly, illuminating the circle of the clearing, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Then I heard the sound again. Footsteps, now closer, almost within reach of my flashlight's beam. The sensation of being watched grew stronger. A primal instinct made me whip my head around suddenly, and that's when I saw it. For a brief moment, at the edge of the light, a figure stood out among the trees. Tall, pale, and indistinct, as if the darkness itself had taken on human form. Before I could react, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving only the cold and silence behind. My heart was pounding, and every sound in the forest seemed amplified. I retreated into the tent, trying to convince myself that my mind was playing tricks on me, that it was just exhaustion and loneliness. I lay down again, but now with ears tuned to every sound, every rustle, every whisper of the wind. Minutes passed, and I fought against sleep, my mind still reeling with images of that figure. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, but sleep was restless, disturbed by confusing dreams and visions of unseen eyes watching me from the darkness. I woke suddenly, body tense as if an internal frost had taken hold of me. The wind outside had ceased, and the night was unusually silent. It wasn't just any silence, but an absolute void, as if all life in the forest had disappeared. The darkness seemed thicker, suffocating. With the flashlight in hand, I decided to investigate. As soon as I opened the tent, I was hit by a cold that was unnatural, a chilly breeze that didn't match the warm summer night. I swallowed hard and took a step forward, the flashlight casting dancing shadows on the trees around me. That's when I saw him again. The figure was only a few meters away from me, standing still as if waiting. Now I could see more clearly. It was a man, or what remained of one. His skin was pale, translucent, and his eyes gleamed with intense hatred. He wore tattered, ancient clothes, as if he had stepped out of another era. When our eyes met, I felt a sharp chill run through my body. He began to move towards me, floating above the ground as if not bound by the laws of physics. In panic, I tried to call the police, but my cell phone showed no signs of life. The battery, which was full before I slept, was now completely drained. Desperate, I searched my backpack for anything I could use as a weapon, but nothing seemed adequate against this ethereal being. Suddenly he stopped, a few meters away from me, and began to speak. His voice was a chilling whisper, seeming to come from all sides at once. He told a tale of betrayal and death, of how he had been murdered in this same forest decades ago, and how his spirit was doomed to wander here, seeking vengeance against anyone who dared invade his territory. I tried to reason, to say I meant no harm, but he seemed deaf to my pleas. In an instant, he lunged forward, and I felt a crushing pressure on my chest, as if an invisible hand were holding me down. The air was knocked out of my lungs, and I fell to my knees, gasping for breath. Struggling to breathe, I saw his expression change. The hatred in his eyes was replaced by something even worse, a sadistic pleasure, a dark joy in my suffering. Every attempt to move seemed futile, and the darkness around me seemed to close in, tighter and tighter. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the cruel smile on his face, a smile promising unimaginable torment. I woke up lying on the forest floor, trembling body and throbbing head. The ghostly figure had disappeared, but the cold persisted, as if a part of him still lingered watching. I struggled to my feet, every muscle protesting, and looked around, trying to make sense of where I was. The clearing seemed different, darker and more oppressive. I knew I needed to get out of there, but every step was a monumental effort. I ran in what I thought was the direction back to my car, but the forest seemed an endless maze, with trees closing in like ominous sentinels. The sound of my own footsteps echoed, and soon I realized I wasn't alone. Additional footsteps joined mine, heavier, faster. I glanced back and saw the ghostly figure again, now clearer, more real, approaching with a terrifying determination. His fixed gaze on me was like a beacon of pure hatred, a promise of suffering that drove me to run even faster. Every time I tried to hide, he seemed one step ahead, as if he knew exactly where I would go. I ducked behind a thick tree, trying to control my ragged breathing. Silence fell once more. but this time it was broken by a soft whisper that seemed to come from all directions. You can't escape," the voice murmured, chilling my blood. This is my domain." With my heart racing, I left my hiding place and continued to run, but the forest seemed distorted, the trees shifting to block my path. My flashlight flickered, threatening to go out at any moment, and every shadow seemed to come alive, turning into unseen threats. In a moment of desperation, I tripped over a root and fell, the flashlight flying from my hand and going out completely. I lay on the ground, feeling the presence of the ghost closing in, the air growing colder by the second. The darkness was total, and I could hear my own rapid, uneven breathing. Suddenly, a faint light appeared in the distance. It was the moon, finally emerging through thick clouds, casting a pale light over the forest. Using the dim light available, I got up and started running again, my lungs burning and my legs weighing like lead. But the ghost didn't give up. I could feel his presence behind me, closer and more palpable. The chase seemed to last an eternity, hope dwindling with every step. Absolute terror consumed me, and the only thing keeping me moving was pure survival instinct. Finally, exhausted, I stumbled and fell again, this time unable to get back up. I felt the ghost approaching, his presence hovering over me like a cold shadow. I closed my eyes, waiting for the worst, knowing there was nowhere else to run, no way to escape the horror closing in on me. When morning finally came, the forest seemed transformed. The sun filtered through the treetops, casting golden patterns on the leaf-covered ground. Birds sang, and life slowly returned to the place that, just hours before, had been the scene of unimaginable terror. But I wasn't there to witness this transformation.